Good morning. This dog. Hi, so I'm back with another video inspired by another question I saw in my comment section. And so thank you for the questions. I actually appreciate the questions, even if some of them come across a little bit. Anyway, so this question was, well, it wasn't really it was a question and a statement. The statement was that my story wasn't making any sense because why didn't I just go to court and say that he was violating the order? And it's a fair question. I could have done that, or it would make, if you didn't understand the situation, it sounds simple enough that I could have or should have just done that, but it wasn't that simple. And so, probably in order to explain this, I have to go back again to how it started, where I went to court, and what I did was I went to the court, and so this all happened in Canada, and in Toronto, to be specific. And so I lived in a place called Scarborough, and I went to the family court there, and I still operate like this today, which is, it's probably not a good thing. But anyhow, I went to the courthouse to file for custody because I had mentioned before he had just started showing up at my house unannounced and expecting to, I don't know what he wanted, but I didn't want him just to think that he could just access me or, in that type of a manner. He needed to call, he needed structure. I didn't want him just showing up. So I went to the court to get custody sorted out. And I didn't have a lawyer, but there was a lawyer's office right next door. So, and his name was Melvin Lubeck, I remember. And so he was just right next door. So I went in there, told him what I was looking for. And he said, oh, well, I went to law school with the judge who handles family law next door. And he presented himself as though he was well connected and could get this done and over with fairly quickly. So I retained him right then and there. And that's when this whole fiasco started. So initially when I started going to court, he was right. I guess he did know, this judge, and this is why I don't believe that the judicial system is set up to handle things fairly and based on the law. I think it's like a racket. It's there to bleed money out of people. It depends on who your lawyer is, and that determines how your case is going to go. It's not based on anything fair. And that's just my experience with it. So he said, so in the beginning, we set the court dates, court case. I thought it would be done and over with. But as I explained, every time we went to court, there was a reason that we had to come back. Nothing was ever getting settled. I believe that was just all done to line everybody's pockets. There's no point in us coming to court and settling everything in one day because then nobody gets paid, right? So my situation, something that should have been very simple, was drawn out for 3 years, literally 3 years. And that 3 years goes by quickly because if you say I had a court date in January, they come, they're not prepared, lawyer asks for an extension, it gets adjourned 4 months down the line. We go then, something else, it gets adjourned. That's another 3-4 months. And so that's how you accumulate 3 years. And so during one of these adjournments, and so when my ex would come to court, he had his lawyer. His lawyer was not from the same jurisdiction as where we were living at the time. So his lawyer was getting treated really bad by this judge. I'll admit that. She seemed to be biased against him. It was obvious, but it was in my favor, so I didn't care for that, up until that point. After about 2 years, I think I explained in a previous video, I got housing in another part of the city that was quite far away from this court, but closer to where my ex lived and where we all lived at this point. So what I did, well, one day I went to court and the judge, I'll be back. Somebody's walking by. Okay. Uh-oh. What the hell was that? All right, so I'm back. I have part two. Where did I leave off? So what's been happening to me is I've been filming these little things, and I'll press something and then it'll stop recording, and then I'll realize that after I've talked for 10 minutes and then I don't remember where it stopped recording. I have to watch the whole thing again. Anyway, I think this is where I left off. I went to court one day after all these different adjournments. I went to court, and my lawyer, Mr. Lubeck, said that he wanted to be removed from the case because he had a funeral to attend and a death in his family. And this is where things changed for me, because what I should have done was not allow that to happen. But at the time I said, my rationale was, okay, well, I don't want anybody representing me who doesn't want to, because they're not going to do a good job. Whatever he's got going on, let him do that. I'll figure it out. I'll get another lawyer. Because by this time, remember, I'm thinking we're about 2 years in at this point. I moved from this jurisdiction and I went to a whole nother, closer to where my ex lived, which was a place called Mississauga in Canada, or in Ontario, where we lived there. Oh, wow. Look at these deer. There's some deer right here. I don't know if you guys can see it. Hey, deer. I don't know if you guys saw it, but there's 2 deer right here beside me. I don't know if you can see them. Hello, deers. Yeah, so again, just that fast, lose my train of thought. So my thought process was, I don't want anyone representing me who doesn't want to. I had moved in this time during all these back and forth to court to somewhere closer to where my ex lived. Because, I felt like, well, first of all, I applied for housing in that area because I felt like if we're going to try to be co-parenting, because my intent is never to keep my children away from their father. I know how important that role is, right, in a child's life. So I just thought I would make it easier. We'd move closer together, or closer to, where we live, because I lived really far. Okay, I'm going to pause this, past these people. Anyway, so I agreed and I allowed him to come off the case, and the next plan was that she would transfer the case to the court that where we all live. I found another lawyer from that area because I anticipated the case being transferred there. And so my ex, he had that lawyer who was getting treated like hot garbage in the court. So he found himself another lawyer. And so that's when everything changed for me in this courtroom. And this is how I know the court system is very biased. And it's just based on who your lawyer is and probably some other variables that I'm not going to get into in this video. But I got a lawyer from my area. He got another lawyer who was more familiar with this court. And so that's when he started winning everything, basically, and that's how he ended up getting this temporary custody. And then they decided to transfer the case to the court that we're supposed to be in, because this is where we all live. And the plan was that there was going to be a trial to sort out what I was saying, what he was saying, because he was, I guess, saying I was not a good mother. I can't even, I'll be honest with you, I don't remember what his allegations were against me. It was nothing that I can think of other than he just said I was a bad mother because I had a relationship with somebody in the U.S. or stuff like that. Those are the things that were mentioned about my life being unstable because I was traveling back and forth to the States. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, and he made some other allegations to the child protective people, but it was all unfounded. He would say I didn't have food in my house, but I always had food every time they came because they don't call first in Canada. They just show up. So anyway, they were gonna, and he was denying that he was ever physically abusive to me. So we were gonna go to trial to sort all this out. And in the interim, they were gonna let him keep the children. So when the case got transferred to this other court in Brampton, the whole entire case file got lost in this transfer. So there was no case file. It was done. It was everything that we had put into this case file for all these 3 years. Every document, everything was gone. At this time, because the case got transferred, my ex's lawyer dropped the case or told him to find another lawyer because she didn't want to travel to this far court now. My lawyer wanted to get off the case because she said she got offered a job with the Child Protective Agency in Canada or in this area where we lived. I said no. I said, I just want this to be over with. I'm trying to move on with my life. I just want a final order so that we can move on. This offended her. So she ended up dropping my case anyway and put me in a position where, I'd have to go and fight it in another court, which I wasn't willing to do. The Brampton court, because the case file was lost, said my ex and I need to get at the lawyers who had our cases prior to the file being lost to put together a file based on what the records that they had. It was just not, that wasn't going to happen. I was going to have to put in a whole lot of effort and work into forcing these people to do that. They knew I had no money. They knew I didn't have any resources at this time. I was totally tapped out. And so they took advantage of that. And, that lawyer, her name is Manjeet Panu. I'm saying her name out loud because what you did, lady, was disgusting. What you did to me. And every so often, because I'm very, not bitter, but I am not happy with what happened to me because I think it was unjust. I was a victim of a failed system, and that's just literally what happened. How do you lose an entire case file, a court file? So when that happened, he just disappeared. And because there was no pending court case or file, there was no court, there was no file, there was nothing, I really didn't have much recourse. Now, I could have stayed in Canada, went to court, kept going to court and fighting and going back and forth. But I just don't think that was going to be in my best interest. I don't think at that time, mentally, I would have been able to do it. And even trying to do it at a distance, because believe me, I'm not the type of person that would just go away and just lay down. I never did that. I filed judicial complaint against the judge for giving this weirdo my children, even though there was clear evidence presented that I was being presented to her that he was not the co-parenting type. I continually contacted the court in Brampton to find out if they could locate this case file in some way, shape, or form, or at least explain how something like this could happen. I had been in touch, and if you go through my community posts, you'll see I've posted documents there that I have obtained over the years and of things that I have done to try to make this situation right. But ultimately, my main goal, even though there wasn't really a lot I could do, in my case, I didn't have money. I'm not rich enough to be fighting in courts for over 3 years. It's just not something I was going to be able to do. But I did make people's lives uncomfortable. I disrupted people's lives. I made sure that they understood that I wasn't going anywhere. So, good morning. So, yeah, that's it. That's the answer to my question. That's why I didn't go back to court, because there was really no court and I didn't have any money to continue to fight. So, anyhow, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for listening. As always, any other questions, please leave it in the comment section. I do read the comments and I'm willing to answer. Have a great day.